Greetings, fellow explorer. You've just stepped into my channel, and I couldn't be happier. If you're new, go ahead and subscribe, and maybe even send this to someone who needs a smile. Let me know your location in the comments. I'm all ears. Let's jump in. I can still remember exactly how she said it. Bonnie and I were sitting at the kitchen table halfway through the takeout we'd picked up from our favorite Thai place. She hadn't eaten much, just pushed her food around, jaw tight and eyes distant. I figured she was still annoyed about the mix-up with the florist earlier that day. But then she looked directly at me, expression flat, unreadable, and said it. "I want an open relationship," she declared, her voice cool and deliberate. "If not, the wedding's off." No lead-in, no explanation, no attempt to soften the impact. After 5 years as a couple and a full year engaged, she dropped that ultimatum like a grenade in the middle of dinner. I didn't say anything at first, just looked at her. She was clearly bracing for an outburst. I could tell by how rigid her posture was, shoulders tight, breathing shallow. She expected yelling, begging, maybe even heartbreak. But I just set my fork down and leaned back in my seat. "Okay," I said evenly. Her lips parted. A trace of disbelief flickered across her face. She blinked, like she wasn't sure she'd heard me correctly. "Wait, okay?" she echoed. "You said that's what you want," I replied, keeping my tone even. "So, okay." Bonnie leaned in a little, eyes narrowing like she was trying to figure out if I was being sarcastic. "You're just agreeing? That's it? What's there to argue about?" I said with a small shrug. "You gave me 2 choices, open relationship or no wedding. I'm going with what you asked for." She scanned my face, searching for any trace of resentment or defiance. I didn't give her any. Internally, I was reeling, but I didn't let it show. She scoffed, trying to shake it off. "You don't mean it. You're just doing this to win." I shook my head slowly. "If this is what matters to you, I'm willing to accept it. We'll sit down tomorrow and figure out the details." Bonnie leaned back, silent for a moment. For the first time in a while, she looked unsure, maybe even off balance. She'd expected resistance, maybe even a fight. Instead, I gave her agreement. I'd accepted the terms of her deal without protest. The next evening, she came into the living room with a notepad in hand. She sat across from me on the couch, legs folded under her, gently tapping a pen against the page. Her tone had shifted, more careful now, like she was trying to frame it all logically. "So, if we're going to do this, there have to be rules," she said. "It has to be respectful. No lying, no secrets. Always use protection. And if either of us asks a question, we answer honestly." I gave a short nod. "Makes sense. Anything else?" She paused, biting the inside of her cheek. "No curfews or anything, but just be considerate." I pulled out my phone and typed everything as she said it. She watched me do it, brows slightly furrowed, maybe surprised I was taking her words so seriously. "Okay," I said, setting my phone down. "Those are the terms. We stick to them." Bonnie let out a soft, nervous laugh. "This is kind of strange, right?" "It's definitely different," I answered, voice steady. Later that night, after she'd gone to bed, I stayed at the kitchen table, scrolling through my contact list. Over the years, Bonnie had occasionally mentioned which of her friends had flirted with me or made offhand comments about me. She'd always laughed it off like it didn't matter. But I remembered the names. I sent a short message to Paige, an old friend of Bonnie's who had always seemed a bit too intrigued during our conversations. "Hey, want to meet for coffee this week?" "No pressure. Bonnie and I are trying an open thing," she replied almost immediately. She really agreed to that? And yeah, I'd love to. Then I texted Clara, one of her colleagues I'd seen at several work events. "Dinner soon?" Just being transparent. Bonnie and I are exploring an open setup. Clara took a little longer, but the message came. "That's unexpected, but yeah, dinner sounds nice." 2 simple messages, both entirely within the boundaries Bonnie had outlined. By the time I switched off the lights and headed to bed, she was already asleep, breathing slow and steady. She had no idea I'd already set the wheels in motion. Thursday night, I decided to tell her. Bonnie was curled up on the couch, phone in hand, casually scrolling. I stepped into the room and delivered it like I was reading off weekend errands. "Just so you're aware," I said, "I've got coffee with Paige tomorrow." "Dinner with Clara on Saturday." Her head snapped up. "Wait, what?" "Coffee with Paige." "Dinner with Clara," I repeated, calmly and clearly. "Thought I should keep you in the loop." Her phone slipped from her hand and landed beside her on the cushion. "Jordan, those are my friends. You can't just do that," she said, frustration tightening her voice. "Why not?" I responded, my tone steady and composed. "This was your idea. You laid out the ground rules. No lying, full honesty, protection always. I followed them to the letter." Her cheeks flushed. "That's not what I meant," she snapped. "I didn't think you'd actually go after people we know. I assumed you'd use an app or something, meet strangers, not people from our lives." I met her gaze, slow and deliberate. "You never made that distinction. You said respectful, truthful, and safe. I've stuck to every part of that." She stood a little straighter, arms locked across her chest like she was building a wall between us. "This is different. Paige is basically family. And Clara, she's my coworker. This feels deliberate, like you're trying to get back at me." I kept my voice even. "I'm doing what you said we were allowed to do. If the boundaries were only meant for you, you should have clarified that from the start." For a moment, she just stared at me. Her mouth opened, then shut, like she couldn't find the words she was looking for. I could see she hadn't expected me to actually go through with it. She thought I'd stall, argue, or sit in limbo while she figured herself out. What she hadn't counted on was that I would take her terms seriously. Eventually, she muttered, "This isn't what I had in mind." "Then you should have spelled it out more clearly," I said. "But unless you change the deal, this is what we agreed on." Silence settled in, heavy and loaded. For the first time since she proposed this whole thing, she looked genuinely unsure. Her confidence flickered, and her eyes searched mine like she was realizing I wasn't playing along. I was simply playing by the rules she set. Friday afternoon, I met up with Paige at a cafe near her office. She was already seated when I arrived, giving me a brief wave as I walked in. Her smile was neutral, but her eyes carried a trace of curiosity. "So it's true," she said once we had our drinks and settled in. "Bonnie really asked for all this?" "She did," I said. "Told me point blank. She needed an open relationship or the wedding was off. I told her fine." Paige stirred her coffee slowly, letting that settle. "Honestly, I figured you'd push back. Bonnie said you'd never go for it." "I don't see the use in fighting someone's needs," I replied. If that's what she wanted, I let her have it. She gave me a long look, then leaned in slightly. "There's something you should know. Lately, Bonnie's been going on and on about a guy at her office, Victor. She brings him up all the time. Funny, flirty, always hovering near her desk. A few weeks ago, she asked if I'd cover for her, if she decided to go out with him. Said she'd wait until things were less rigid." Her words. I let that sink in, though I didn't let my expression shift. "She told you that directly?" Paige nodded, her voice dropping slightly. "She made it sound like the open relationship was about growth and breathing room, but really, it was about him. She didn't think you'd actually use the arrangement yourself." I leaned back in my chair, sipping my drink slowly. "That's revealing." The rest of our chat stayed light. We touched on work, shared a few laughs. When we parted ways, we exchanged a quick, friendly hug. Nothing more. Driving home, I kept thinking about Victor, about Bonnie's sudden demand for space and freedom. It all fit too perfectly. She hadn't been after openness, she wanted permission, a way to justify stepping into something she'd already been edging toward. The part she didn't anticipate was that I'd take that same door and walk through it first. Saturday evening, I had dinner with Clara at a cozy Italian place across town. She seemed slightly guarded at first, but once the starters arrived, the tension eased. Clara was sharp, candid, and didn't bother with small talk. "She really threw that at you?" she asked, swirling her wine. "Just dumped it on you like that?" Exactly like that, I replied. Her exact words were, I need an open relationship or the wedding's off. Clara let out a quiet exhale, shaking her head. Honestly, not surprising. She's been talking about needing room to breathe at work for weeks. She's been spinning this story like you're some overbearing guy who doesn't let her live, trying to make herself look trapped. I let that sit for a beat. Has she mentioned anyone by name? Clara's eyes narrowed slightly, knowingly. Victor. He's been stuck to her like glue at every happy hour. Laughs at all her jokes like she's the only one in the room. It's obvious. People are starting to notice. She's not exactly hiding it. I thanked her for her honesty. The rest of dinner flowed smoothly. Just relaxed conversation, no undertones. When I dropped her off, I already had my approach planned for when I got home. As I walked through the apartment door, Bonnie was on the couch, arms crossed, face tight with tension. So, she said coolly, how was your date? Dinner was good, I said. Clara's easy to talk to. Bonnie's eyes narrowed. You're enjoying this, she snapped. You're doing it just to get under my skin. I kept my tone calm. I'm following the rules. I haven't hidden anything. This is exactly what you wanted. She shot up from her chair, fists balled tight at her sides. You're twisting my words. I asked for space, not this. You weren't clear, I said evenly. You didn't want space. You wanted permission to see Victor. Her face lost color, then flushed deep red. You don't know what you're talking about. I know enough, I said. If you want to end things, just say it. Otherwise, I'll keep doing what you asked for. She looked like she might scream, but no words came. She just stood there, trembling with rage, unable to speak. And in that moment, I knew. The next conversation would determine everything. That Sunday afternoon, I asked her to sit down with me at the kitchen table. No distractions, no phones, just us. She hesitated, eyes guarded, like she already sensed where this was headed. Bonnie, I began, voice steady, we need to settle this. Either we close this chapter, or we walk away from the engagement. There's no middle ground. She pressed her lips into a hard line. You're blowing this out of proportion. I just needed some breathing room before the wedding. Breathing room for who? I asked, leaning closer. Victor? Her eyes shifted, just for a moment, but it was enough. You don't get it, she said quickly. It wasn't supposed to go anywhere. I just needed to see him a little. It didn't mean I stopped loving you. It didn't mean I wanted to end us. I shook my head slowly. You gave me a demand. Either we open the relationship or there's no wedding. That wasn't a conversation, it was an ultimatum. And now you're upset because I didn't react the way you expected. She slammed her hand on the table. I didn't think you'd actually go along with it. And that's the core of the problem, I replied, keeping my voice level. You assumed I'd beg you to stay. You wanted the freedom, but not the outcome. Now you're shocked that you're living with it. Her voice cracked. So that's it? You're just throwing away 5 years? No, I said. You did that when you decided our future hinged on this arrangement. You drew the line. I simply didn't fight it. And now I've seen where this road leads. Me holding on while you keep testing how far you can go. She stared at me, eyes wide, searching for something to grasp. But there was nothing left to hold on to. I'll start calling the vendors tomorrow, I said softly. We'll divide everything. I'll cover my part. This is over, Bonnie. And for once, she didn't argue. No shouting, no bargaining, just silence and tears streaming down her cheeks. The next week was filled with cancellations and phone calls. The venue deposit was gone. The catering service kept half. The florist just sighed and said she'd had a feeling this might happen. Each call cost money. But with everyone, I felt a bit more like myself again. Bonnie didn't protest the logistics. She barely spoke at all. When she did, it was mostly blame. You're ice cold, she told me one night. Like none of this matters. Like you feel nothing. It's not that it means nothing, I said. I'm just not angry. There's a difference. Her family didn't take it so quietly. Her sister sent long, angry texts calling me selfish. Her mom called twice, pressing for answers. I didn't give them any. My parents already knew the full story. My father just shook his head. My mother told me I did the right thing. That was all I needed to hear. Paige reached out with a short apology for how everything turned out. Clara messaged too. You did the right thing. She was never fair to you. Neither of them spoke to Bonnie after that. Victor didn't say a word, no message, no apology, no defense. He left her to handle the wreckage on her own. A week later, Bonnie and I met at the apartment for the last time. She stood in the doorway, arms folded, trying to wear the same confidence she had the day she gave me her terms. But it wasn't there anymore. You ruined everything, she said, her voice flat. I held her stare, steady and unbroken. You made that decision, I said. The moment you linked our marriage to this condition, it became yours to own. The consequences, I thought to myself, were hers alone to bear. She didn't respond. Without speaking, she turned around and went back inside. As I placed the last box into the trunk, my thoughts wandered back to that evening at the kitchen table. Her voice echoed in my memory, cold and absolute. I want an open relationship. If that's a no, then there's no wedding. I hadn't paused. My answer came instantly. Okay. She rolled the dice. She came up short. And I walked away, calm, clear-headed, and completely free.